you. Hey.
Namaste.
Namaste. So, Arjuna, I know you talked about parking for the intensive, correct? Okay, so we closed the intensive, and I think everybody here has signed up, or you're in the process of signing up, because I know that Natalie was taking care of Ani and Kaisha today. So if you have not signed up, you're going to have to go on a wait list. And anybody out there in Crowdcast land who hasn't signed up and thought they were going to sign up and come here, we are full. So sorry, but you can sign up on Crowdcast. So I just want everybody to know so there's no disappointments. It was amazing. It's just like the night and day. It filled up immediately. So we just made sure that everybody here in this room had a seat. Arjuna, especially since you hadn't signed up. We went to no one.
All right, so Satas, how are we? Are we on?
Yeah,
We're
we
live.
are.
Okay, so welcome everyone from wherever you are, including everyone here. So this, we've been running on kind of a theme these last number of talks, and the theme hasn't fully faded away. It's integrating. But I thought I would share something that came to me yesterday morning as I was doing a samadhi, which I wrote down and Sachamayi typed up. And but I wanted to first talk about the nature of revelation. You know, the quality of knowing of a human being is by accumulating pieces of information and then assembling it. So it's a linear process where we take a fragment here, a fragment here, see if it fits, doesn't fit, problem here, problem there, see if this is the solution or not the solution. So it's a rational and analytical process. This is actually useful. Gita to reason or the intellect as being a very helpful, no matter where you are on the spiritual path, because it's the, you might say, the most developed principle of our consciousness, especially those of us who live in the West with education as we usually do. So, but the nature of when we awaken, the nature of knowing shifts. We awaken differently at different times, but the first shift is a knowing without thinking. It's a quality of I like the word recognition. You know something not knowing how you know it. Sri Aurobindo called it an intuition. So this quality of knowing but not knowing how you know happens the quieter the mind becomes. I mean, of course, we have knowing without knowing how we know it throughout our human life at different times. But this kind of quality of knowing and and without thought is a quality of witnessing. That's characteristic. Witnessing the thought, witnessing the feeling. It has its own kind of component of separation. And of course, we know the separation is of the what. So the what begins to demonstrate itself in our capacity to know. And as it does, the thought's quiet. Therefore, the consciousness becomes more able to discover what's there rather than to think what's there. Less likely to project on rising up with some content of something that just happened or some strategy of yourself in life that you project onto the current situation, some trauma, some past. So in the advantage of the first stage of awakening, where the thought's quiet, is the possibility of direct knowing. So this is pointed to in the Bhagavad Gita, and this capacity of true knowledge. It's the recognition of that which is already here, not discovering something new that can be added to your body of knowledge, or something where you can see how that piece fits. That piece is what you're looking for to solve that problem, which is also reason, but in the domain of human mind, coming from separateness. Now, in the human system, the mind and the reason is the most developed. It is able to get some information. Science is evidence of the application of reason, which allows us to step out of our mood and our reaction and our previous judgment and try to objectify and then test our conclusions and all the rest of it. When this kind of direct knowing comes, it too should be applied. Reason should also. It should be tested. It should be verified. It should see if what I just recognize is true and look to see what it's revealing to you. So the quality of reason carries with us. Go in. It's really basically a translating a quality of knowing that's beyond mind into something mind can know, can understand, can rationalize, can see how it fits in. This is why it's very helpful in the spiritual path after awakening to journal. Because the advantage of journaling is that no matter what it is you've met or experienced or recognized, you're learning to bring it into the ordinary consciousness, the mind and the reason and the intellect, and being able to see linkages between what has happened and what might and what has perhaps happened further past and how it's related to you. So the reason function of the human system can be a positive collaborator with what we do, what happens in our ability to recognize truth. Real ability to recognize basically what I mean by truth is what's already here. We were not able to be before. The other nature of this stage of the first stage of knowing is it uses the psychic being more than the human being. It uses a quality of us that was there all along, especially when we were children, where we experienced things, but we didn't know how it fit together. So there is this ability to use that quality of knowingness that comes with our individuality. Every human being has a psychic being as part of its field, our field of our individuality. But the next level of knowing is when we penetrate that boundary of the field of our individuality, where we actually pierce the veil of our psychic being. And we end up into a different quality of consciousness at a very fundamental level. The nature of the consciousness is merger or absorption. It's where we move out of our individuality and begin to move into immediacy with what it shows up in our life. People, circumstances, thoughts, moods, feelings. We are no longer bound by the quality of knowing that's referencing to what's in it for us as individuals. So it is also this direct seeing, but it is larger. And the other thing about the quality, it's no longer seeing. That was more of the psychic. When you hear somebody say, I saw this vision, or I saw the deity, or I saw this great light, you could know they're looking at truth through the veil of the psychic. Light is the veil of the psychic. But the spiritual, it's a substantial experience that curves to your system in the recognition of what it is that's being revealed at any one moment, or what's being recognized. So there's an essential difference when we go into a place where it's the transition at the 7th chapter where we open up to the universal. And the first stage of that is unity. It comes with knowing the Brahman, the 8th chapter. In the state of unity, we are in our awareness, in connection to everything we're in relationship with, in our awareness. And the nature of the awareness at this stage is a knowing without knowing how to know. It is like a direct seeing, you could say, mixed in with a direct, substantial sense of what it is you're relating to. Now, Sri Aurobindo talks about this much, and he says that the nature of that quality of knowing something from that state of oneness or connection or merger is knowing through identity. That literally the individual, the mechanism of consciousness that identifies with what it associates with, where it individualizes what shows up, steps back from the individual and becomes a means of knowing what you're attending to, that starts revealing, you could say, in a subjective, objective way, the true nature of what you're attending to. So you can think about the beginning, and it's more than just a thought. There's this kind of entry into the quality of what that possibility might mean, even if it's just the thought of the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, for example. And you can enter into an experiential relationship with that. And in my experience, you can find a match. That somehow you know this at the level of your at the level of the essence of your existence. And then something of that itself. For example, the idea of a Big Bang, it's a thought. And you have some information about that, right? So you take that thought and put it into the cauldron of this capacity to know through identity, and something of what that would be representing, not what necessarily scientists have said, although that can be very useful because science is using reason to try to parse down to the most objective fact they know. And there is this recognition that mathematics has a striking, remarkable correlation to what really happens in that dimension. So then you can enter into that thought with the recognition that there is something here, and what is that representing? And find this kind of unfolding that will occur, a blossoming that's coming through your attention in that kind of like being in the presence of that. That's much more than just witnessing or noticing. That which you attend to shows itself. It reveals itself. So this is the difference between seeking and finding. So you're finding essential truth in what you're attending to. Now, is it the final and absolute truth? Probably not. But it will be a reflection within the limits of your expansion as an individual awakened being of what is true. Much more than if we used our education or our scientific training or our analytical capacity or even our psychic seeing and the visions that may come with that. This is of knowing directly. So some of you can know the difference between this in your own experience. The nature of knowing something directly. You contemplate on the butterfly, you become the butterfly, you're so light, you barely touch her. When the breeze comes, you're thrown this way and that way, and you learn to ride the current without getting damaged. So you become the thing you attend to in a way that cannot actually normally be languaged. The only thing that would allow you to language it is if you have trained yourself to take these recognitions, these unfoldings, and journal or note it. So I have that all my life. I've journaled, and I journaled through the entire spiritual journey, and I journal still now, and this is from yesterday's journal. So I'm going to get it into the room. Let me try to put into words what has come to me. It was triggered this morning in my samadhi. I was less absorbed than usual, so my discerning mind was with me. It's one of the characteristics that happens is that we can currently our fully awakened consciousness with our relatively more ordinary kind of thinking or knowing, simultaneous. What it does do is it allows for that quality of our individual human consciousness to start taking on something of the attributes of our awakened consciousness. Sri Aurobindo talks about this as the development of the supramental knowingness, the supramental being. The thought started with remembering a fragment of the BBC documentary called The Journey of the Universe. Radhakrishna shared the video link with it, and it was a BBC, documentary about the black hole and the early formation of existence and the various qualities of what occurred from there, as including the evolution of, life and everything we know. It was really like my journey of consciousness in a visual panorama. It was quite enjoyable. And at the end of it, I really thought that they had tapped into what it is in a very real way through science, because it was all science, all mathematics. So in this state, in this documentary, it stated that if the Big Bang had a million percentage less energy, it would have collapsed back on itself almost immediately. And if it had a million percent more energy, it would have dispersed itself too much to organize to create this world. The thought was, how did it know? How did it know exactly millionth of a fraction to say, let's stop here? How did it know? What was it that knew? What does that say about the rest of existence? What is the quality of the whatever that is? That could say, this is just right. This is it. Yes, this. How did it know, yes, this? And then it goes on to everything about this planet and its location in the solar system, about the chemical compounds that make up the atmosphere. If it just had been a slightly greater percentage of one than the other, life wouldn't have occurred. Every piece, every step of the foundation of matter was evidence of the same quality that would know, yes, this. And what is that quality? Every particle of existence, yes. From this inquiry came a cascading of realizations that are leaving me dumbfounded. This is what I was writing. Every particle of existence is infused, always, with an intelligent note, yes, this. Each element takes form because the intelligence says, yes, this. Right? Nitrogen stays nitrogen. Platinum stays platinum. Each element said, let's stop here. Yet this. So that each particle would eventually have a place in a compounding and aggregating formation that could allow us, to exist. It could allow us to live, and it could allow us to wake up. So this was the cascading of the recognition of the truth of this quality of intelligence. Thus, the element metals organizes itself, becomes stable for as long as needed, for all time if required. Why is it that our 70, 80 years now? What is the cohesiveness of the different parts of this body that is being able to work together in this kind of like natural knowingness that says yes? And that natural isn't we lose our balance for a while, but then a new organization comes forward and it too says yes, this. You answer. You have to go through all the process. When it's all said and done, the body knows, okay, now I've got this. I got a limp. I got a limitation. I have a lung, whatever it would be. And then the body says, okay, yes, this. Each this, each yes, is this bringing it back to be able to serve its purpose in the whole. And every part of our body carries something of that original intelligence that's striving to keep our individual consciousness awake, alive, our individuality. And what does that say? What does it say about our relationship with existence? What does it say about us and our relationship with existence? What does it say about each day of our life and why we are the way we are and why things are showing up the way they are showing? It's speaking to an ordering. It's speaking through a purposeful intent. So I am right now experiencing this. It's unspeakable awe, wonder, holy mood, the perfection, the absolute perfection. That has allowed all this to last, part of it, unspeakable billions of years, and parts of it, a day and a half. Part of it fleeting, part of it stable. And then what is the quality of that? That was there at the beginning, and it's here with us now. What's our relationship to existence? The first thing to know is we've become existent. We have become, each of us, an individual expression of existence. We stepped down from what we were before creation, and we have become this. And the response to that? Yes, this. Living from yes, this is a lesson of finding the thisness in whatever moment arising and recognizing it, which is the yes. I too am this. Every part of this body is an assemblage of these yes, this structures, each playing part in the whole, allowing these words to be written here. Breathtaking. And all-pervading intelligence, diffused in and all, in and around every particle, is this same intelligence recognizing itself at right. So the nature of our capacity to know any aspect of existence is because we're in any aspect of existence. We are every aspect of existence. Not made from our individuality. Maybe we'll never see or know the extraordinary possibilities of different aspects of this universe. Not in our conscious mind. But whatever it may be, it will all share this same original intelligence that is holding everything, including what's happening right now on this planet, including this uninhabitable planet we're headed towards, including our discovering what is our role in relationship to this diminishing of the opportunity of mankind or humankind. It's just a new arena. But you can know and you can trust that the same thing that brought you this life, the same thing that allowed you to be who you are, the same thing that allowed you to awaken, the same thing that lives you, the same thing that can know in you, that can actually be in relationship with existence in the way that's possible. It's purposeful. Because how did we end up? How did mankind come out of animal? How did animal come out of fish? How did fish come out of fungus? How did atmosphere come out of compounds and destruction and chaos? How did matter come into existence through explosions and fusions and extraordinary unspeakable energies? I was reading something. The sun consumes 40 billion cubic something matter a second. Huh? And it's going to do that for another couple of billion years. The scale of what we are is unmatched from the littleness that we've become habituated to. But that same intelligence and that same intelligence is having what's happening now on this planet to these biological organisms, to each of us. That even in our individual ignorance, where we can really screw things up, there's intelligence. And even in the wisdom and the capacity that allows for things to work and put in correction, is also equally part of the same purposeful unfolding. So it's not a matter of faith for me. It's a matter of direct seeing, direct knowing, direct experiencing. So I don't need faith. I know that whatever it is and whatever role we play, whatever role I play, whatever role any of you play, it's still being governed by this intelligence, and whatever particular role we have in that, it's not the question, okay, well, I'm now stuck at nitrogen. I'd rather be carbon, I'd rather be platinum or gold. It's not that. It's us being able to say, yes, this, when we recognize this. So it's not about mobilizing everybody you know and writing letters to your congressman or your senate. It's not about, creating your own blog and trying to tear down the error that's obviously being demonstrated. Although some of you may know someone who serve, and because they know you, they're writing the letters. They're taking the action. They're walking the streets, or their kids are taking school off every day. Something we don't know the cascading effects of what happens to the condition of consciousness on this planet when we take actions aligned with intelligence from our awakened being. Because if nothing else, whatever needs to happen will happen more effectively because we're in a direct knowing of what we are with the who we are. This is what perfection is. So perfection isn't about doing something or getting perfect. We know it, not like a judged or evaluating thing. It's really a capacity to accept this as the truth right now, as it needs to be. No change required, no improvement required, no change in you, no change in the circumstance required. Perfect, just as it is. It's a capacity to be in a relationship in this way that begins to open up in us that original human intelligence that came into existence on the day of the Big Bang. Of course, there was no day prior to that, but at that beginning of time, in that 1/10 billionth fraction of a second, where it wasn't there and then it was there, and it was there all at once. And it knew what it was doing. It knew it was heading somewhere. It took 15 billion years, minus 2 million, 200 million, but 15 billion years to really be able to have the opportunity to know itself through each of us. Okay. So I wanted to just kind of set the context for everything that's arising right now, because I do get a little carried away sometimes when I see a new avenue or a recognition of darkness or error that needs to be brought to attention. But we need to always bring it back to us right here, right now, each day. Yes, this. Because from yes, this, the next thing demonstrated more fully than no, not this. All right, there you have it. All right, so what do you do with this, right? How do you make this practical? How do you put it in motion? You know, how do you live this? How do you make this real? You know, part of it is the question for me always is because, I mean, this thing I've come to is so full and complete. There's like, why ever come out? You know, why ever come out of the absorption? Why? What is it? I do know it's needed. I do know it's required of me. I do know that I have no choice but to take the actions I take. But the intelligence larger than me knows it's useful for me to speak. An intelligence larger than me knows how to be an architect, how to be someone who took an abstract thing and made it real, and then awakened it. For each of us, we have our own particular capacities and orientation, and they're part of this intelligent stream to manifest a possibility through you, which where you play a critical piece in the unfolding of the intent that the intelligence is carrying in this time, in this place. So I speak, you listen. That's the job. Effectively, we're done. But human beings created the problem. Human beings are going to have to find a new way to create a solution. So the human being of me has to be engaged. And the human being of you has to be engaged. It's not just our personal problem, right? It's a peril that's showing itself and making itself more and more and more and more and more apparent until it'll do it or we'll do it. And what is that? Well, I don't know. But if you have the quality of knowingness that comes from outside of your human paradigm, it'll be revealed to you. It'll unfold naturally. It'll always come from where you are right here, right now. It won't come from you being better or different, circumstances being better or different. It'll come from this. Yes, this. Always. Right here, right now. But if you align yourself, if the part of your reason and intelligence can recognize the peril and its inevitable consequences, and you can feel within you the cry, the action, then something will come. Something will show itself. For you specifically. Each of you. Specifically. Be in touch with what you're experiencing right now. Just notice what's going on for you. Notice what you're in touch with. Notice what your body is telling you. Check all the 4 places where your intelligence resides. Your body, and your gut, your heart, and your head. Just touch bases. What's going on? What is this? In me. I really shouldn't say it. It's hallelujah. Amen. uh, yeah, so I did my piece. All right. So what's there? I open it up to you. Any of you would like to come forward?
Perfect.
All right, welcome.
That's a good reason to come up fit.
Maybe all of you saw him looking younger. I see his manhood. I see him coming into his authority as an individual. So in some ways he looks older. There's not something about entering into the world. He spent, as you know, spent almost 3 years, almost continuously, right? Yeah. And then we sent him back, and he's working these various jobs, scrambling with his apartments, and not money to even visit for a short period. And what's happened? Spiritual growth. What's happened? It came in. It's in. And it's grown him up. And he didn't have to say anything. Am I wrong? Yeah. Scott.
So you're speaking of this perfect beyond perfection, but also about the errors of creation. And maybe from the side of perfection, 100,000 lifetimes is a blink. But
Unless you're one of those lifetimes.
From this side of the fence, 100 lifetimes looks like a long time, much 100,000 lifetimes.
Remember, those are just ideas. Those are just words. May or may not be 100,000 lifetimes. Maybe it's always this, right here, right now. Time is a structure that has organized our consciousness to be self-aware, but it's actually a temporary construct. So you're maybe chewing up the remaining 20,000 lifetimes in the weeks you've been here, months you've been here. We don't know. And the imperfection, of course, how can you tell? But perhaps if it wasn't for what a perceived if there wasn't a perceived imperfection, a greater trueness couldn't manifest, a greater perfection couldn't manifest. So that which is contrary to the evolutionary purpose is actually part of the evolutionary purpose. Darkness is necessary for the light. The light is necessary for the nature of duality and the appearancy of time. Time doesn't exist for animals that don't have self-awareness. It's just every day until there's no more days left. You're dead. In human beings, we have the rajas, which makes every moment of every day. Now, then the next moment, right now, it seems like a lot of moment. The rajas puts us into that attitude that's always looking for better, which you could say is part of the problem around global warming. Even in the highest hope for our children or our grandchildren that our ancestors had, look at where we are. Yes, we have great pleasure, great options, great choice, great education, great possibilities, not just for ourselves, but more so than ever before. And look at what's happening. So even a good intention can have ill outcomes. So, you know, we can't know.
It's a paradox.
It's the continuum. And what it really is about is our ability to be with this. And coming out of that part of us that says, not this, something else. What's on TV, you know, what's on Netflix, right? Anything but this. To me, that which is to be with, yes, this. That's saying, no, not this. Finding that, no, not this, in us is part of the building. It's already in our lives. Why is there suffering? We're suffering because we are not actually at the level of relationship with the truth of what we are, where we can yet go beyond suffering. But what defined suffering was something that had to do with the error of this, not this. Not enough that I'm in the garden. Let's try it outside the fence. Let's be the apple. Let's experience separation. Let's experience doing it ourselves. Let's explore the possibility of being miserable. Not knowing, because that's all adventure is, you know, can end poorly. Just watched a movie about guys climbing mountains and dying, you know, it could end real poorly. So the idea of that there is a structure in the design of us that purposely puts us into a place where we're unwittingly creating resistance to what is. And that particular cauldron of misery and dissatisfaction of our own unwitting creation is what creates a pressure on the consciousness that forces it to wake up. That if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for putting coal under tremendous pressure over thousands of years, we wouldn't have diamonds. So too, the human consciousness is in a process by which consciousness is no longer being able to be diffused and in oneness, but is separated and put into this individualized, crystallized condition of ego in order for it to discover something other than ego. It became, in its peak of suffering, not this to the 10th degree. And that's what pushed the consciousness to discover what was already there. Discover a new way of being. Yeah. So the, you know, the bitching and moaning is a very human characteristic. The ruminations and the hopes, wishes, and the doubt and I need no are all parts of the human design that comes from the consequence, not of our fault, as we all know. It's just like nitrogen having to be nitrogen for as long as it needs to be nitrogen. So we have to be bound for as long as we need to be bound until we're no longer bound. The only difference is between and every other quantum piece fragment of this existence is we have choice. We have something of what was there at the beginning of creation within each of us. A capacity to bring into existence something that didn't exist before. That's outside of time. That's outside of the history of us and the history of us and all the past patterns. So that something's what wakes up. But being able to hold on to that woke up, the ability to bring that woke up condition into ourselves so that we become stable in that awakened state, that we become then established in that awakened state, allows for each of us to become a conscious, collaborating expression of that original intelligence. And what we bring with us is that every word, every action empowers the unfolding of the opportunity that this existence is. Maybe not every word and every action, but much more effectively can we recognize our role in any one moment and be capable of meeting it.
The choice of fight or flight. You could say that chunk of coal is our individual soul, and pressure is what's not going to spit out a diamond, it's going to spit out a realized being.
That's right. And the art of this process is your ability to tolerate the pressure.
Exactly.
The ability to stay with what's arising, even when it's top, even when it clearly it's not this to every part of you. Screaming and yelling, kicking and screaming, complaining, bemoaning, seeking agreement, finding solutions, palliatives, compensating structures, anything but this. Learning to train our consciousness to be able to be with this is what us to find that stable intelligence, to find that eternal quality of knowing that we really are. So there's the work. You know, strip away mysticism and all the techniques and all the mantras and all the rituals and all the sacred priests beings and all the glorious places on the planet where people have come to realizations in the Himalayas. Take all that away and there's only you here right now. And you're closer to truth than any other place, any other moment than you be. And that's not an abstraction. That's not blowing smoke up your ass. It is a direct recognition of the truth of what it is, which if this can come to you, you will know too. And there's a part of you that's receiving this and knowing it's true. But convincing the rest of you, that's the hard part. We are all made up, like I like to say, 10,000 cells. So you got, the Christians went out and got martyred. Well, you have a lot of converts within your own system. You don't have to go anywhere. Right there in your chair with you. And those pieces you're not able to see right now are the ones that still need conversion. But what you are is greater than all those pieces. What you are has more authority than all those pieces. What you are can create out of nothing. Can bring something into existence that would be very, very difficult for someone else because of the nature of the consciousness you've come to. So there's the real work. Returning to our original nature. And what is that point before existence, as I call it, the Sat? And that point exists within each of us as the soul. That's why we are what we are. A body was finally created. 1 billion pieces are cooperating every single second in order for this, your body, my body, our body, to be able to hold this supreme reality, hold this soul. It's all sacrificing itself continuously. Most of the cells every 7 years, they die, they burn out, just keeping up with you. so that this opportunity can manifest. Each play its piece, willing, without resistance, doing all it can, giving all it has, so that you can exist. Every cell, every molecule, every piece. It's always moving. Every piece has a different role at different times, but it's the whole process, so that you could exist, and so you could take conversation, and so you could begin to affect your life in a way that you never knew you could. You could begin to shift the reality you took absolutely for granted, to see it is simply an unwitting acceptance to something that was not true. You got anything in there left?
Yeah, actually, that I didn't even get to the question that
Oh,
I really
okay,
had. I mean, before we got out in the
You talked
galaxy, we
yeah.
started talking about knowledge and
Yeah, yeah.
discrimination, and
That's good. I love his nuts and bolts. Right? Contractor, right? Contractor is the guy who always took the plans and made them real.
yeah, yeah. But it has to do with intuition and where that fits in there. Is that a product of the psychic
No,
mind?
yeah, it's intuition draws its base from the original reality. Yeah, so it does take on the character of the vehicle that exists with. Like in animal life, it's instinct, but in human life, it's intuition. So the intuition is knowing while not knowing how you know, or knowing something is recognizing something of greater value than something else. That's intuition. It hasn't yet actualized. It hasn't yet particularized, but it has that essential quality of knowingness, not knowing how it knows, but it's contaminated by the need, desire, the fear, the programming of the system that carries the intuition.
But what if it's right
It,
and it's not contaminated?
if it's right in that moment, then the rest, then it's about the capacity of the system to recognize it's right. Or the circumstances that could go in and confirm the rightness even if you doubt it or question it. And you have people who can recognize the truth of that intuition and say, hey, no, man, follow that. That's right. You can't know it yourself. Interimly, this is how it is. That's why it's so important that our environment is just as critical as our awakening. The context that we awaken in, the circumstances that we in can determine how far you can go with that, or if it happens at all beyond it can complete it all. So therefore, if you're in a place where those around you can recognize intuition when it occurs, then you're in a group of people that are going to awaken your intuition, that are going to allow it to be more true. That we become, without consciously knowing it, linked people, even other human beings. We create tribes, we create clusters, we create families, and in that we become merged, even at the biological level, the vibration of each of the persons. And if those persons are aligned with the unfolding opportunity we are, this is great. But if they're not, they become obstacles and diminishing of the awakening that occurs. That's why there's Sangha. So what in us would know to hang out with the best people you can is your intuition.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I'm referring to really is my intuition.
That's right.
Because I chose many years ago to really honor that. And it's developed over decades.
I'm correct.
And it can be very true instantly.
So this now intuition for you is moving into direct knowing. So it's already moved into direct knowing. So when an intuition is like the first shoot of the of oneness, it comes out of our connected to the whole thing. It is the first shoot that comes through the individual. Once it's been able to blossom and flower and move into relationship, it becomes the awakened consciousness. It becomes the direct knowing. So there's no difference. One is a kind of a less formed version of the other.
Intuition must go away when you're in your
No.
state.
No, it's
You don't need it, right?
it just because sometimes depending upon the circumstance, we're all even an awakened being has to operate within the gunas, has to operate within the physicality and the dimension, vibrational field of mankind. So even an awakened being will have periods where the intuition will be clearer or less clear, the knowing will be clearer or less clear. The only thing that happens is the original consciousness, especially if you go into samadhi or meditation, you're going to be able to get above the gunas. You'll have the full thing, but can you bring it down? And then can you speak it? So this ability to hold on to and operate from that direct knowing is going to be variable. It's going to vary each day. It's going to vary each cycle of the lunar cycle, every annual cycle, every life cycle. So there'll be times in your life where the direct knowing is there's no doubt, no barrier. It's perfectly recognized, perfectly manifest, or relatively perfectly. It'll always be relatively perfectly manifest because these other 10,000 cells have been good and some haven't. So it always will be kind of like that muddled thing at times and very clear at others. We cannot expect it to be clear. We cannot expect it not to sometimes be muddled.
Right. Okay, thumbs up.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
The boss spoke.
Yeah, the timekeeper. All right. All right, so that's tonight's satsang. So we'll finish with a silent sitting. Be for 10 minutes. Let us begin. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. All glory to Guru.